Hello. Today I will be building an induction motor. I would like to preface this with please do not try this at home. If you do not know anything about electric, this can be very dangerous. And I do not have all of the materials to build this motor. I do not have a resistor or a capacitor, so we'll just find out what happens when you don't have those to build this. Though I do not have a resistor or a capacitor, I do think I can still make this motor, although it may be a little more difficult than it should be. I will show you the materials now. The materials include 4 galvanized bolts, a light switch to turn it off and on, a 2-prong plug to wire so that it gets electricity, a tape measure, electrical tape, a screwdriver, 32 AWG magnetic wire, and a drill to drill the holes for the bolts. Alright, so the first step is to wrap this wire around these bolts, which I have gone ahead and wrapped the threading in electrical tape so that it's easier to wrap onto there. But I do need to wrap it 220 times around each bolt. So have fun watching the time lapse, and it is currently 5:15. I will tell you what time it is when I'm done. Well, I'll definitely say that that wasn't an enjoyable experience, and it took almost exactly 30 minutes. It is now 5:44, and I have the galvanized steel bolts wired up. They're all wired to each other, along with the first one having a loose wire and the last one still being connected to the wiring as a whole. But as you can see, I counted by 20s, and you can see where I started to get more and more rushed as my tallies got less coordinated. And I don't know if it'll show up well on camera, but my fingers, specifically my index and my thumb, are more red than the rest, and my fingers are in a bit of pain, but overall it didn't take as long as I thought it would. I thought it might take an hour or so, but I taped up the ends of the wiring so that it did not come unraveled, and time to head on to the next step. This next step should be putting the bolts into a wooden frame. It is currently almost completely dark outside, so I won't be able to film the actual cutting of it in good lighting. I might still film it. But I will measure out what I need the frame to be. And hopefully it works, because we only have one 2x4 that I'm doing this with. So if it doesn't, then I'll find a different frame to use. I've done the measurements. This is how, sorry for my brother playing the trumpet in the background, but this is how they should be laid out, just off center, like shown here, so that when electricity is run through them, a magnetic field pushes this the can lid, which is used as a rotor. And if you had them directly in the center, they'd just be pushing at each other and not really doing a whole lot. But the only way this is going to cause complications is for drilling of holes. I'm going to have to drill it a little weird. But I need to cut out a 15.5 inch or four 15.5 inch boards, and then put the back ends of each bolt into them. And then I will hook them up to these two prongs on the light switch. And I don't think I'm gonna ground it just because it's gonna be very temporary. And then from the light switch, I'm going to hook up two copper wires, and I'm going to thread them through these, and it should come out right here. So when that snaps shut, I dropped it. But when that snapped shut, they should come out of here, come over in the light switch, and then the light switches wires are going to be hooked up to these ones, and I just hope that it works. All I need now is the base, the wiring, and then something to hold the lid up. Well, I'll see you cutting. Alright, so it's pretty cold out here. It's 38 degrees. I got my board, and it's dark. So we'll cut out 4 squares, or 4 boards, and we'll go back inside and start doing all of the wiring. Oh yeah, just a little nib. Right, so now that we have all 4 of our pieces of wood, I will need to take the lid, and I'm going to poke a hole through it and mark on the wood where I would need to drill in a hole for the bolts. And the only thing I'm worried about with this is that it's going to be it's gonna crack, and so I'm either going to have to go real slow and pray, or I think I'm gonna go with the hot glue option, where I'm just gonna hot glue the bolts in after I drill it, so I don't have to really worry about cracking. So in order to put the lid, used as a rotor, onto the nail, we're going to have to either indent or just fully put a hole directly into the middle. So I'm going to use a tape measure and a pocket knife with a glass breaker on the end of it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the pocket knife on, and I'm going to hit the top with a hammer, just because it's an old, dull knife. And hopefully there should be a little indent right there that a nail or screw would hold up, so that it'll spin when all of the bolts get electrified. So let's see how that'll go. Alright, so I did I poked a hole in the middle, or as close to the middle as I could get. It wasn't exact. So when we place a screw down and we put the can lid, let's see, right on top of the screw, like so. Push it down a little bit, we push it down a little bit, and it does go to one side, but as soon as you spin it, it should equal out. And so what I'm hoping happens is that, yes, it's gonna go in like this, but it should, hopefully, when it starts spinning, spin and equal out like that. So, with all the holes drilled in, I have gone ahead and I haven't glued it together, of course, or nailed it together. I'm going to glue it together because, once again, it's temporary. I'm just going to sand these parts and hot glue it, and just kind of hope it holds out until Monday. But I've drilled holes for the bolts so that they can hang out. The lid is going to go right here along with the screw, which I need to find a bigger base for because for some reason all of a sudden it's not wanting to stand up. So the lid's gonna go here, and all the bolts are in the correct orientations, I think. I just need to get wiring and electricity. So I'm gonna glue these and see you at the wiring. Also mention that while drilling the holes for the bolts, it did quite hurt my hand. Not because I did anything wrong, but I was holding onto the drill real hard, and you can see here where I marked, and then I drew and I drilled, and then you can see here that it's not the same height. So I went in and I went back and forth until I actually got the height that I wanted. So this hole is slightly bigger than this one, which is a mistake that I have dealt with. But this hole is too oblong, and so right here I need to probably put probably more hot glue up here to keep it upright, and a filler here if I need a filler, of course. I did mention how this screw kept falling over when I wasn't having problems with it. I might just be getting unsteady, but I did get a piece of plastic that I'm going to glue the screw onto as a steady base, but I did have to sacrifice a Tupperware container lid. Right, so I got the wood glued into place. I once again set it up as if it was done. These bolts are loose in here, but I do feel as though it's tight enough that I don't have to glue them in, at least right now. This is where the rotor is going to be, and this is not actually going to be attached to anything. All of these extra wires right here, they're going to be I'm probably going to tape them like out of the way over onto the other bolts. And I do still have, I guess that ripped off, but I'll sand the edges of this wire, if it'll focus. Oh well, it's not going to focus. So I will sand the edges of the wires that are not in the bolts, just in case they do have a coating on them that would make them not conductive. And then I will start putting them together inside of the outlet and the light switch. So wish me luck. So I have run into an issue where I put the bolts in and I don't want to take them out because I'm about to get ready to do the wiring. And there is right there an overlap in the bolt in the wire. So I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna put this wire, which is attached to this lower bolt, and this upper bolt, because it's kind of looser. I'm going to tape it here. I'm going to put this wire, which is attached to this bolt and this bolt, also down here. And then this wire, which is attached to this bolt and this bolt. Sorry, I'm thinking about what it's on right here. And so they'll all be out of the way and not touching the actual rotor, which I don't know if it would actually cause any ill effects, but I just don't want it to happen. But I would have liked like one taped here, and then maybe another taped like up here or down here. So I've run into another issue. my hands shake too much to easily get the wire wrapped around that, and it is making me, it is making me quite frustrated, and that is not helping the shaking. So I'm hoping that that screw comes completely out, and I'm just gonna thread it around that a couple times and put it back in. It does not. I'm just going to have to figure out how to get it around this one and then around this one. Hopefully these ones will be easier to do, and then I know that putting two wires together isn't going to be easy, but I am going to use some pliers and I'm going to just twist them together. Finally got one of the wires in. It comes up, and it attaches to this, and then that comes over here and is tied together with this bolt, which is for this bolt, or like attached to this bolt. So next I'm going to thread wire here. Sorry about the shaking. And then it's gonna come over here, and that is going to be threaded with this wire right here, if you can see that. Right, so I have screwed in the outlet so that my wires aren't hanging everywhere. It will be plugged in. I'm not gonna plug it into a wall because, quite frankly, wall power is horrifying. But it does have wires coming out that go up into this, which is not on. So whenever I plug this in and turn the power surge protector on, which is what I'm going to plug it into, it will not immediately start flowing electricity. It is plugged into this, which is hooked up right here and right there. And now the last step before plugging it in and turning it on is to electrical tape all of these down to where I want them to be, and then waiting. So before my parents get home, which is what I'm waiting on to plug in the motor, because quite frankly, I am horrified of wall power, and if you are thinking about making something like I made, which I should not have, so nobody watching should play with wall power, especially with the stuff I'm missing, like a resistor and a capacitor. And if you do not know why I am horrified of wall power, then you also shouldn't be doing this. But I would like to give a brief overview of my experiences doing this so far. So I found it challenging. I was definitely afraid to even get started just because I knew that it would take a long time. It has taken me roughly 4 hours to complete, to the level that it is thus far. I did find the most challenging part to be woodwork. None of the wood is cut correctly, and my arms and hands do hurt because I'm not used to doing woodwork. Wiring it was kind of scary, not because it's doing anything yet, but just because I know that it does definitely have the chance to fail, and I am expecting it to fail. But if it does not fail, then celebration. If it does, devastated isn't the word, but I can definitely say I'll be sad. I know this is Nikola Tesla's induction motor. He invented it. And I know that giving up is not what he would have done. He would have kept going on. But due to time restraints, I do not have the time to continue to work on this. So if it fails, then it fails. I had the experience of measuring everything out. I can say the hardest thing to measure was the holes for the bolts. There is still one bolt that is angled upward, kind of at about that degree. And I did destroy a Tupperware lid. We spent, I want to say, $200, $210 on this, because wood isn't cheap. Bolts aren't cheap. No, we probably spent $150. Bolts aren't cheap. Wood isn't cheap. The wiring itself, the wiring costs $30 for the 1 pound that I got, because I will likely be using it later on. If it does work, I do have a few theories about what would happen without a resistor. The leading one that I'm hoping it isn't is that it's gonna trip the breaker, because it's just trying to pull as much wall power as it possibly can. Which is why I'm using a power surge, just in case. I know that it might not do anything, but it'll add an extra layer of protection. If it doesn't turn on with the power surge, or power surge protector, I'm going to remove the power surge protector from the equation, and then I'm just going to plug it straight into the wall. Another one I have is that it may heat up a little bit, or a lot of it. I have no idea. I don't think there's enough electricity running through it, just because of how small the coil, the wire is. 32 AWG is not even a thing that you can get at Home Depot. We had to order it off of Amazon. So overall, I would say that this was it was definitely physically taxing, but it was more mentally taxing, I think. And it was hard to understand the blog that I used, because they didn't really give many details. The blog is called TheElements at TheElements.org. And overall, I would say that it was probably too much of an undertaking for a 3-day time window in which I could do this project. And so I don't think if I had the choice to do it again, I would do it again, but I'm quite glad I had the experience. It does not seem like it is. Okay, hang on. Plugging this in. Is the switch off? Yeah.
Is it supposed to be touching that one?
It's being. Ready? Go. In. Oh.
It's up.
It is up. Okay.
It needs to spin.
It's smoking.
That's...
Where is it smoking?
Right.
Wire.
You can't see the smoking?
Yeah, you should turn that off. Okay, power on. Oof.
Yay!
What's supposed to happen?
Remember what? As you saw in the previous clip, it was a failure, which I'm quite happy with. I'm happy it didn't do nothing, because that would have been a true failure. I would have been sad about that. But I was actually pretty excited when I saw this wire explode, or vaporize. As you can see, there are charred remains of wire right here that is completely black. Right on this light switch here, there is charred wire that is completely frayed. On the plug, you can see the burnt tips of the wire, or the melted tips of the wire. And one of my predictions about this was correct. These bolts, right on the tips, if you put your finger on it, after turning it off, of course, they got very hot. And that's called an induction heater. It's when a bunch of coil is wrapped around something that can induct heat. And so if this had stayed on long enough, theoretically these bolts could have melted. And as you saw in one of the clips, there was smoke rising right about here, either from this bolt or from this bolt. And my other prediction of tripping the breaker was incorrect. I did not think about how tiny the wire was when I was thinking about it. Oh, dropped that. But what happened was all the electricity ran through this wire and caused it to vaporize. So, as you saw, this lid straightened out rather than spinning, which I think was because of either these wires touching, because they should have been exclusively touching the one straight across from it, or it was just the way that I wired it. I may have wired it incorrectly, but what I think was that these ones were trying to pull the lid towards them, so that way and that way, and it would have spun the lid like this, so it would have spun this way. But these bolts were trying to push the lid, and so this one was trying to push it that way, and this one was trying to push it that way, and it would have spun the lid this way, and it encounters just like a state of stasis, so it just kind of sat upright. And as you may have heard, I don't know if it was truly shown in the first clip, the lid slammed against this bolt and stayed there because it was magnetic. So this one was actually pulling, which means these two were pushing. But overall, I'm quite excited that we got that result specifically. I'm happy that it even tried to work. I'm happy that these started to heat up and produce a magnetic field just like they should have. And I'm not saddened by this experiment whatsoever. I'm quite happy that I did it, but overall, I don't think I would do it again. Thank you for watching.